For years, many men grew up believing that to make a woman like them, all they had to do was be kind, attentive, and devoted. That love was earned through patience, small gestures, and endurance. But the truth is harsh. Men who try to be good out of need often end up losing respect, and with it, attraction. Not because kindness is wrong, but because they confuse kindness with having no boundaries. And a woman cannot desire someone she doesn't respect. The so-called nice guy doesn't fail for being noble. He fails because he stops being the leader of his own life. Many men write to me saying they don't understand what went wrong, that they did everything right, were loyal, generous, and understanding, that they gave everything they had, and still things fell apart. But what they don't see is that behind all that giving was an energy of need, fear of loss, and a craving for approval. And when that happens, the relationship stops being an exchange between equals and becomes an invisible power struggle. Women don't lose respect because of kindness, they lose it because of weakness, because of that feeling that the man has no direction or self-guidance. If this is your first time here, I'm Celia. I've spent years helping men understand female psychology, build healthy relationships, and reconnect with their self-worth. In this video, I'm going to show you why so many women end up walking away from seemingly perfect men, and how you can regain that respect without changing who you are. Stay until the end, because you'll learn the exact balance between being a good man and a strong man. Let's begin. The most common mistake men make in relationships isn't about being kind, it's about how they interpret that kindness. They believe being a good man means always saying yes, avoiding conflict, and putting a woman's desires above their own. But that kind of kindness isn't a virtue, it's fear in disguise. Fear of disappointing her, fear of losing her, fear of not being enough. The problem is that when a man lives seeking approval, he stops being an inspiring figure and becomes predictable, and predictability kills attraction. What's often called being good is really just people-pleasing, and people-pleasing kills respect because it removes all tension. A woman may appreciate a kind man, but she only respects one who has standards, boundaries, and direction. A truly good man isn't the one who avoids problems, but the one who faces them calmly and with integrity. He doesn't need to dominate or impose himself, but he doesn't submit either. His kindness comes from strength, not weakness. For generations, what's been misunderstood is the real source of female attraction. Women don't fall in love with the man who gives them everything. They fall in love with the man who gives of himself with purpose. Attraction doesn't come from being helpful, but from being grounded. The man who erases himself to please sends the message that he has no life of his own. And when a woman senses that, she starts to feel she has to lead the relationship. That emotional imbalance slowly kills desire and erodes respect. Imagine the difference between a man who says, "I'll do whatever you want as long as it makes you happy," and one who says, "I want us to be okay, but I also need to feel at peace with my decisions." The first one acts out of fear, the second out of conviction. The woman may not agree with him, but she'll respect him, because respect doesn't come from pleasing, it comes from consistency. The myth of the nice guy was born from a culture that confused gentleness with weakness. We were taught that to love means to please, when in truth, love also means knowing when to say no. A man with strong values isn't afraid to lose a woman for staying true to himself, and that kind of confidence creates more attraction than any romantic gesture ever could. If you felt invisible, frustrated, or confused after giving everything and getting crumbs in return, understand this. Your problem isn't being good, it's being too permissive. Respect can't be demanded or begged for, it has to be inspired, and it's only inspired by someone who acts from his core. True growth isn't about stopping being good, it's about learning to be good with strength. Because goodness without strength is submission, goodness with strength is leadership. And once you understand that principle, you reach the next truth few are willing to face. When you become too available, when you're always there without being asked, you stop being a challenge and become a certainty. And certainty, no matter how noble, stops sparking desire. One of the most common mistakes men make that leads to losing a woman's respect is confusing attention with total availability. Being present doesn't mean being constantly there. When a man becomes omnipresent, replying immediately, cancelling his plans, and adjusting to every whim, his value begins to drop without him even realizing it. A man's logic says, if I show her I care, she'll feel secure. But a woman's logic works differently. If he's always there, I don't need to take care of him. What's meant to show commitment ends up showing predictability. Attraction needs space, mystery, and tension. When a woman knows she can have you anytime she wants, she stops seeing you as a choice and starts seeing you as a guarantee. There's no excitement in what's predictable, and no desire in what's obvious. Being too available removes the contrast that keeps curiosity alive, and without curiosity, admiration fades. A man who's always accessible gives up his power because his time stops having value. By now, you've understood that the nice guy myth comes from the fear of losing. Now you'll see how that fear shows up in behavior. The overly available man lives waiting for the text, the call, the next chance to show up again. Without realizing it, his life starts revolving around her emotional schedule. He does it out of love, but what it communicates is dependence. And no woman can respect someone who puts himself in the background of his own story. Respect is born from the perception of balance. If you give more than you receive, if you stay when she disappears, if you justify the unjustifiable just to avoid conflict, your energy loses weight. You become predictable, and predictability inspires neither respect nor desire. Women don't need men who are always available. They need men who are present when it truly matters. The difference is huge. Being unconditional doesn't mean being constantly there. It means being reliable when it counts. A self-respecting man knows when to give and when to step back. He doesn't offer himself where he's not wanted, nor does he force his presence where he's not invited. He has a life, he has boundaries, and he has priorities. That's what makes him attractive. His attention has value. When a woman realizes that your presence isn't handed out freely, but must be earned, she begins to value your time, your words, and your company. The irony is that the more you try to prove you care by always being available, the less you're valued. Attraction doesn't grow from constant presence. It grows from the feeling that your attention could be lost if it's not appreciated. A man with goals, projects, and purpose doesn't need to be in touch all the time. His life already has direction, and that shows. That independence is what commands respect. So the next time you feel the urge to show interest by being there every minute, remember this: nothing is more attractive than a man with boundaries. Respect is earned through mindful absence, just as much as through conscious presence. Learn to be the man who doesn't beg for attention, but inspires connection. And once you understand that excessive availability destroys respect, you'll see the deeper pattern behind it all, the constant need for approval. That silent craving to be liked, accepted, validated is the very root that weakens your inner strength. And that's what I want to talk to you about next. One of the most invisible yet most destructive mechanisms in male psychology is the need for approval. It's that constant urge to please, to prove your worth, to be recognized. On the surface, it seems noble. You want her to be happy, to feel loved, to notice your effort. But underneath, what's really happening is that you're giving away your power. When you act expecting a reaction, when you measure your value by her response, you stop being free. The need for approval is a silent form of emotional dependence. A man who seeks approval lives in evaluation mode. Every message, every gesture, every silence becomes a test. If she responds well, he feels relief. If she doesn't, he spirals into anxiety. It's an emotional roller coaster where your self-esteem rises and falls based on external validation. And the most tragic part is that a woman cannot respect a man whose emotional state depends on her. Not because she's cruel, but because instinctively she stops seeing him as stable. So far, we've seen how excessive availability destroys respect. But this is the heart of the issue. The man who needs approval doesn't act out of desire, he acts out of fear. His energy doesn't say, I choose, it says, please choose me. And that energy is felt. Every time you do something with the intention of pleasing, you stop being authentic. You stop acting out of conviction and start acting out of convenience. An attraction can only exist where there is authenticity. The irony is that the more you try to be liked, the less likable you become. Because the energy of someone seeking approval is the energy of someone who doesn't believe he's enough. Respect isn't earned through compliments, gifts, or availability, it's earned through consistency. A woman might enjoy your gestures, but she'll only admire you if she senses that the approval that matters most to you is your own. When you stop chasing validation, your presence becomes firmer, calmer, and far more attractive. The solution isn't to stop being thoughtful, it's to change your intention. When you act out of conviction, you expect nothing in return. When you give because it feels right, without fear of losing, you project abundance. A man who validates himself doesn't need to control anyone's reaction, and paradoxically, that's what makes others respond better. People are drawn to those who don't need them. Emotional security is magnetic. Your task then is simple but profound. Stop asking permission to be yourself. Don't explain your decisions. Don't seek approval for the way you act, dress, or think. The woman who respects you will do so for who you are, not for what you do to convince her. Authenticity is the language of respect. And if you ever doubt your worth, remember that the only approval that truly matters is the one you give yourself in the mirror. Everything else is just noise. Once you reach that level of inner freedom, no one can make you feel small again. Before we continue, I want to take a quick moment with you. If this topic is helping you understand yourself better or recognize something from your own story, take a second to subscribe, hit the like button, and drop your name and country in the comments. I love reading them and seeing from which part of the world you're joining this community. You can also share your personal experience or advice for other men. I always read the comments and deeply appreciate what you contribute. That's what makes it possible for us to keep growing together. Now that you understand how the need for approval sabotages respect, I want to show you what happens when men try to compensate for that weakness by doing the opposite, going from submission to rigidity, believing that being imposing is the same as being respected. When a man realizes that his kindness doesn't earn respect, he often makes the opposite mistake. He hardens. He goes from, I want to be loved, to, I want to be feared. And while that might seem like progress, it isn't. Because fear doesn't create respect, it only creates distance. Real respect comes from admiration, not submission. A woman might obey out of fear, but silently, she'll stop admiring you. And when admiration dies, attraction follows. Many men, tired of feeling ignored or taken for granted, try to compensate for that frustration through control. They start to monitor, impose, and correct out of anger. They think that by becoming tougher, they'll regain power, but all they do is flip the same dynamic to the opposite extreme. Where there once was people-pleasing, now there's rigidity. Where there once was neediness, now there's pride. In both cases, the man is still reacting to the woman's behavior instead of acting from his own center. So far, you've seen how the compliant man loses respect for lack of boundaries. Now you're seeing how the controlling man loses it from having too many. Both extremes stem from fear of not being seen or fear of losing control. But respect can't be earned through fear or maintained through pressure. When a man tries to assert authority through force, what he's really showing is insecurity. A truly strong man doesn't need to prove it. The kind of emotional leadership that inspires respect is quiet. It doesn't need to shout, threaten, or mark territory. It's visible in calmness, firmness, and consistency. A man with inner strength radiates confidence because he doesn't need to convince anyone. He listens without reacting, decides without arguing, and walks away without drama when his boundaries are crossed. That serenity is disarming. It reflects self-mastery. And self-mastery is the highest form of power. Once you understand this, you also understand that respect is earned through consistency, not control. Women don't admire men who need to dominate them to feel strong. They admire men who can stay the course even when emotions run high. The man who controls himself inspires trust. The man who tries to control others destroys it. The key lies in balance: firmness without aggression, authority without arrogance, boundaries without coldness. You don't need to harden to be respected. You just need to be clear and consistent. Respect grows when your words and actions align over time. If you make a promise and keep it, if you say no and stand by it, if you walk away when you're not valued, quietly and without drama, your presence gains weight. A man who doesn't need to prove his power becomes magnetic because he projects stability. He isn't swayed by emotion or driven by impulse, and that naturally earns the respect of others because they sense they can't manipulate him. His calm can't be bought with attention. When you learn to distinguish between respect and fear, you free yourself from the urge to dominate. You start leading by example instead of reaction. And it's precisely at that point of balance where the lost respect can be restored, when you begin to act from your center. Losing a woman's respect doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process that starts with small gestures that go unnoticed, giving in when you shouldn't, staying silent about what bothers you, justifying the unjustifiable. Until one day, you realize she no longer listens. Your words have lost weight, and your boundaries no longer exist. But losing respect doesn't mean everything is lost. You can rebuild it if you're willing to do something most men never dare to do. Stop justifying yourself and start changing your behavior. The first step to regaining respect is consistency. It's not about showing strength or pretending not to care, but about becoming predictable in your values and firm in your decisions again. If something bothers you, say it. If something goes against your principles, act on it. Don't wait for her to notice your discomfort or figure out what you feel. Respect begins the moment you start taking yourself seriously. If you don't respect yourself, no one else will. So far, you've seen how control and submission destroy balance. Now it's time to understand that rebuilding begins in calmness. You can't regain respect through words or promises, but through consistency. If you said you'd change something, do it. If you set a boundary, hold it, even when she tests you. Consistency is quiet but powerful. Every time you keep your word, your energy strengthens. Every time you give in out of fear, you go back to square one. The second step is to reclaim your personal space. A man who's completely absorbed by the relationship loses his identity. You need to get back to having your own time and activities, your projects, your rest, your circle. Not to pull away from her, but to remind yourself that your life doesn't revolve around anyone. That mental independence is what restores balance. When a woman sees you returning to your center, she starts seeing you differently because she senses the confidence you had lost. The third step is learning to communicate with serenity. It's not about complaining or imposing. It's about speaking clearly and calmly. Constant arguments don't bring back respect. Firmness does. When you can express your limits without yelling, without over-explaining, and without giving in to emotional manipulation, you create a kind of respect that can't be debated. The respect that comes from stability. It's also essential to shift your focus. Don't seek her respect just to feel validated. Do it because you owe it to yourself. When your priority stops being getting her to change and becomes being the kind of man who doesn't tolerate disrespect, everything realigns. It's not about punishing her. It's about raising your own standard. Lost respect is rebuilt when the relationship stops being the center of your life and you take that place again. And if, despite everything, she doesn't respond, if she keeps minimizing your boundaries or challenging your calm, then you already have your answer. Sometimes, respect can't be regained because the relationship simply doesn't have the foundation to sustain it. In those cases, walking away with dignity is the greatest act of respect you can show yourself. Respect isn't asked for, it's built. And if a woman has lost it, you can still regain it, but not with words or pleas, only through real transformation. Because respect for yourself begins the day you stop seeking acceptance and start living according to your own principles. Once you manage to stay consistent, you'll notice a deeper shift. Attraction begins to return, but not out of fear or effort, rather out of strength. And that's where I want to take you next, to understand how attraction and respect feed each other when you act from true integrity. Attraction isn't a trick, it's a consequence. It doesn't come from sweet words or empty strategies, but from coherent energy. A woman feels respect and desire for a man who lives in alignment with what he says, does, and believes. That integrity is the foundation of masculine magnetism. It has nothing to do with looks or money, it's about presence. The presence of a grounded man is felt before he even speaks. His gaze is calm, his voice has direction, his decisions carry weight, because a man who knows himself doesn't react, he chooses. So far, you've learned how to regain respect after losing it. But this point goes further. It's about sustaining it through consistency, about understanding that attraction isn't something you maintain by doing things, but by being someone. A man with integrity doesn't seek validation because he already lives from his own sense of worth, and that kind of energy can be felt from afar. He doesn't need anyone to confirm he's doing things right because his inner compass is clear. That clarity is what most attracts a woman, knowing she's with someone who has direction. Integrity also shows in difficult moments, not when everything's going well, but when things get uncomfortable. A man with emotional strength doesn't crumble under criticism, doesn't need to be right, doesn't panic when misunderstood. He stays calm and chooses his response wisely. That steadiness earns respect because it radiates self-control. And when a woman senses that a man governs himself, she instinctively sees him as strong, mature, and worthy of admiration. Attraction born from strength has another key element: authenticity. A man with integrity doesn't fake it to please. He doesn't change his essence to fit in. He can be kind without being weak, firm without being harsh. That balance of calm and confidence is what sparks female curiosity. Women feel safe with a man who doesn't contradict himself, who doesn't say one thing and do another. Because integrity, on an emotional level, translates into trust. What's most fascinating is that when you reach this level of congruence, you stop caring whether someone approves of you or not. And that's when you truly become attractive. Because you stop acting to please and start acting from your essence. That emotional independence has a powerful effect. People want to be around you not because you need them, but because they feel better beside you. A man with inner strength doesn't compete or try to prove himself. He lives with purpose. He doesn't beg for attention because his attention already has direction. He doesn't try to impress because his authenticity does that on its own. And when a woman senses that calmness, she doesn't feel she's with a nice guy or a tough guy. She feels she's with a real man, one who doesn't need to hide behind any role. That's the true foundation of respect. Integrity. It's not about being perfect, it's about being stable, about being who you say you are, even when no one's watching. Because respect isn't demanded or negotiated, it's inspired by example. And when you learn to live from that inner alignment, the most powerful balance emerges. Being a good man without being weak, firm without being cold, generous without losing yourself. That balance is the essence of everything we've talked about, and exactly where I want to take you as we close this journey. True respect isn't earned by choosing between being good or being strong. It's earned by learning to be both at the same time. A balanced man isn't afraid to show empathy, but he also doesn't allow others to take advantage of it. He knows how to care, but he also knows how to say no. And that combination, so rare today, is what separates a man who pleases from a man who inspires. Kindness without strength turns into weakness, but strength without kindness turns into hardness. The middle ground, where your heart and your principles coexist, is where true masculine power is born. Being a good man doesn't mean being passive. It means having clear values and acting according to them, even when it costs you something. It means staying calm when others lose control, speaking respectfully even when you're not treated the same way, and walking away with dignity when reciprocity is gone. That kind of kindness doesn't seek rewards, it seeks peace. And peace is far more attractive than drama. Up to this point, you've seen how integrity creates respect. Now it's time to understand that balance sustains it. Women don't look for perfection, they look for stability. They don't expect you to be a hero, but someone who can stand firm without losing his humanity. That combination is magnetic because it conveys confidence and maturity. The man who knows when to give and when to step back is the one who leaves a lasting impression. You must also understand that firmness doesn't mean coldness. You can set boundaries without raising your voice. You can show tenderness without losing authority. The difference lies in your intention. You give because you want to, not because you expect something in return. And when you give from that place, respect comes naturally. The woman who sees you act with that balance realizes you're not trying to dominate or to please her, but to connect from your center. The key is not to lose yourself in either extreme. If you become rigid, you disconnect. If you become too soft, you fade away. Respect and attraction live right in the middle ground, where there's firmness without pride, empathy without submission, and clarity without rigidity. That balance transforms your presence, your tone, your gaze. It's what makes you a man who can't be ignored. Being good, then, isn't about being weak. It's about choosing integrity even when the world pushes towards selfishness. Being strong isn't about being harsh. It's about having control without losing compassion. When you learn to unite those two forces, you become a complete man. And that completeness not only earns the respect of others, it restores your respect for yourself. Remember, respect isn't asked for, it's reflected. And love isn't begged for, it's inspired. If you find this balance, you'll never have to worry about maintaining attraction. Attraction will come naturally, supported by your stability and consistency. Because the man who knows how to be good without being weak and strong without being cruel becomes a presence impossible to replace. Respect, attraction, and admiration can't be bought or forced. They're built through consistency, boundaries, and purpose. Being a good man isn't about giving the most. It's about knowing yourself the best. If this video helped you see clearly why kindness without limits destroys attraction, I hope it reminds you of something essential. True power lies in choosing yourself first, without losing your humanity. Thank you for watching until the end, and for being part of this community of men learning to lead from calmness instead of fear. I invite you to subscribe, leave a like, and share your name and country so we can continue growing together. I always read the comments and deeply value every story and every word. Take care of your mind, honor your worth, and stand firm, because when a man respects himself, everything around him begins to respect him too.